Welcome to the Forum, your modern-day coffee house, where ideas can be birthed, exchanged, and wrestled with. We celebrate questions, conversation, and reason as powerful tools to enlighten hearts and transform minds, shaping a new generation of thinkers, innovators, and pioneers. We're glad you're here, so pull up a chair and let's begin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Joel, and I'm one of the founding members of the Forum. And along with Danny, Kev, and Claire, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you here tonight for this evening's community lecture, The Moral Case for Capitalism. The Forum was founded in October of 2024. We're a modern-day coffee house and think tank rooted in the spirit of the Enlightenment, that incredible moment in history when reason, debate, and the courage to question transformed the world. The spirit of inquiry lives on here at the Forum in 2025 because the need for it most certainly hasn't gone away. Tonight's topic speaks to one of the most fundamental and fiercely contested questions of our time. Is capitalism moral? It's not just a technical debate about economics. It's a question that cuts to the heart of how we see the world, what we believe about freedom, justice, equality, and human nature itself. For over a century now, we've seen an ongoing struggle, intellectually, politically, and culturally, between capitalism and socialism. And that struggle is far from over. For many, socialism still speaks to our sense of compassion and fairness. For others, capitalism represents freedom, innovation, and dignity. And for many more, the lines between them are blurred and confusing, creating a mixed system of both. Here at the Forum, we don't pretend to offer easy answers, but we believe fiercely that asking the right questions and being willing to hear bold, challenging perspectives is how real understanding and transformation begins. We're not here to teach you what to think, but to assist you in forming a cohesive, philosophical framework that guides you in how you think. And so tonight, we are beyond excited to host Yaron Brook, author, speaker, YouTuber, and outspoken advocate for capitalism, not just as a practical system, but as a moral one. His views are uncompromising, often controversial, but always deeply thought through. Whether you agree with him or not, you will be challenged. And that's exactly the point. So once again, thank you for being here, for choosing to think, to engage, and to wrestle with the ideas that shape our lives. Please put your hands together for Yaron Brook.
Thank you. Beautiful venue. I'm just worried this is going to fall on me. We are, one of the most perplexing questions I think that we face in the world today is the antagonism towards capitalism. People don't like capitalism. There is no political party that I know of anywhere in the world right now, with one exception, that advocates for free markets, for capitalism. Not a single one. The one exception, anybody know who the one exception would be? Milei in Argentina. Javier Milei in Argentina. And the reason this is perplexing is because everywhere capitalism is tried, to the extent that it is tried, it is a massive, unequivocal success. The reality is just staring us right in the face. Now, I want to be clear on what I mean by capitalism. I mean by capitalism a system in which the government is limited in its function to protecting property rights, to protecting our individual rights, and otherwise leaving us alone. Some people call it a permissionless society, you don't have to ask permission to start a business. You don't have to ask permission to innovate. You don't have to ask permission to hire people or fire people. You engage in voluntary transactions with people. What I mean by capitalism is a system where the government has no views about economics. It leaves us free to engage in our economic activities free of controls. Now, such a system has never really existed. We've come close a few times, maybe post-Corn Acts in the UK, right, in the latter part of the 19th century, which is shaped, I think, in all of our consciousness, unfortunately, by Charles Dickens, who wrote great fiction, not nonfiction, as people take it. The United States, post-Civil War, probably from the Civil War to the early part of the 20th century, was about as close as we come. Not perfect. Lots of regulations, lots of controls, but as compared to today, God, what a difference. Hong Kong? Hong Kong was a tiny little place at the end of World War II. It had a population of maybe 70,000 people, had a few fishing villages around, has a nice port, but other than that, no natural resources, nothing. It's a rock. You guys been to Hong Kong? Anybody here been to Hong Kong? I used to say before the Chinese took it over, everybody should go to Hong Kong at least once in their lives because it's a spectacle. What a place. More skyscrapers than Manhattan. 7.5 million people live on this tiny little rock. GDP per capita, higher than the United States. And it did it in 70 years. People basically swam there. They went into little boats any way they could from all over Asia to get to Hong Kong. Why? Because they offered them nationalized health care? No, there was no national health care in Hong Kong. Sorry, fans of the NHS. Was it because they had a robust welfare state? No welfare state in Hong Kong, nothing to speak of. Was it because business was heavily regulated, protecting us consumers from those evil businessmen? No regulations, basically. And yet, over those 70 years, while Britain became more and more socialist, Hong Kong was kind of a bastion of capitalism. It went from basically a poor country to one of the richest in the world. So, the examples of capitalist success everywhere, look at North and South Korea. And yeah, none of the examples are pure, but again, to the extent that countries become capitalist, the extent they protect property rights, the extent that they leave the economy alone, to that extent they succeed. Have you seen those satellite photos of North and South Korea? I don't know, everybody seen these? There's a satellite photo of North and South Korea at night. North Korea is dark. There's nothing. South Korea, all lit up. It's a great, visual for what's going on the ground. One country is booming, is rich, is successful. The other country is still in the dark ages. Literally, the dark ages. No electricity. None that they can afford throughout the country. Do you remember the wall between West and East Berlin? I have to tell students these days that the wall was built not to prevent Westerners from fleeing to the East because of the beauty of communism, but to actually stop Eastern Europeans from fleeing to the West because the differences were so stark. And people risked their lives to try to cross that border, to try to escape to a more capitalist, which is equivalent to more free society. So capitalism is unequivocal success. Think historically. In terms of just wealth, in terms of just material prosperity. 250 years ago, how many people lived at what the UN today calls extreme poverty? I think extreme poverty is $2 a day or less. How many people in the world, what percentage of the global population lived in conditions of extreme poverty 300 years ago, before what we consider the era of capitalism? What percentage? 50, 90, 95, 95. Even in Western Europe and the UK, which were relatively wealthy countries as compared to the rest of the world, it was 80 plus. But globally, 95%. How many today? How many today? What percentage of the global population today lives on $2 a day or less in extreme poverty? And everything's adjusted for inflation. I'm not cheating. I don't believe in cheating. So what percentage of the world population today lives on $2 a day or less? 10? 20? All right, you're an optimist, but you're not far off. Usually if I go to college or university, I'll usually get 40, 50, sometimes 60, particularly Americans who are basically completely ignorant of the world outside of America. They have no clue what's happening. So they think 60% of the world lives on $2 a day or less, which is nuts. It's 8%. 30, 40 years ago, it was 30%. So just over the last 40 years, as China has embraced elements of private property, elements of freedom in the economy, of capitalism, elements, not complete, elements, bam, they've gotten rich. And of course, 40 years ago, South Korea was poor, Taiwan was poor, and much of that part of Asia was poor. So all of these people have come out of poverty. The only part of the world where this is really not happening is Africa. And even in Africa, those countries that have adopted even a little bit of property rights, even a little bit of capitalism, are doing much better than the rest of Africa. So, from a historical, economic perspective, if you have eyes, in my view, and I know a lot of people don't, and a lot of economists in particular don't, capitalism just is a massive success. It's this amazing success story. And I'm sure you'll challenge me in the Q&A. Happy to take the challenges. I think I've got answers to all of them, but we'll see. You guys might come up with a new one. But the reality is, this is a successful, amazing system. And yet, if you go to a university campus, my guess is York is no exception, you go to any university campus, the students are predominantly identified as socialists. Very, very few, if any, would identify as capitalist. Almost all the faculty, 90+% of the faculty, are left of center, if not radically left of center. Indeed, capitalism is frowned upon. Just the term is looked down upon. And indeed, politically, it is a loser. There's literally no political party in the UK today that's capitalist, or even close to capitalist. I mean, the only difference between Labour and the Conservatives is, exactly which regulations they want to impose and what they want to control and what they don't want to control. There's no fundamental economic difference between the last Conservative government and this one. This one's a little bit more, socialist, but not that much at all. Donald Trump is basically a statist. He's not a capitalist. There's nothing about what he's doing which is pro-capitalism. He's just a different type of statist than Biden. But they're all statists. In other words, they view the role of the state to dictate how we live, and the more they control, the better for them. Worse for us, but the better for them. There's just no political party anyway standing for the ideas of free markets, which have made us rich. We are rich, certainly compared to the past, and certainly compared to the poorer parts of the world. And we're rich not by accident, not because we exploited other people, not because of natural resources. Natural resources are distributed all over the world. We're rich because we embraced the system of freedom. We embraced the system of property rights. We embraced a system that was quite a bit capitalist. And in the eras where we were capitalist, we grew fast. And in the eras since capitalism, we grow very, very slowly. And in the case of the UK, you're basically not growing at all. You're stagnating. And I could fix that like this. It's not hard. Everybody tells me, Yaron, how do you create economic growth? I say just look at countries that grow and do what they do. So look at Hong Kong. Look at UK before you stop growing. Look at where it happens. It's easy. Cut the size of government, deregulate, get government out of our lives. That's how you create economic growth. Innovation happens, prosperity happens as a consequence of freeing people up. So why do we hate capitalism? Why do we hate capitalism so much? And people do. I mean, it gets vicious, right? They really have strong emotions about these things. So what is the source of those emotions? It's not economics. It's not history. Economics and history are on my side. Sorry. What is it they resent about capitalism? Well, let's think what capitalism is really about. So when people go into the marketplace to engage in, trade, right? Why are they going into the marketplace? Why did Steve Jobs create the iPhone? What was the purpose of this? Real question. What's that? Yeah, make money. He really wanted to make money. But it's not just about money, right? What else? Steve Jobs did not wake up every morning saying, I want to make money this morning. I'm going to go to work and make money. That's not what Steve Jobs was about. What did he want to do? What's that? Solve a market problem. Yeah, he wanted a challenge. He wanted to do something amazing. He wanted to create something beautiful. He wanted to express himself by making something significant in the world that they wanted to create values. He loved his job. He loved what he did. I hope you guys get to love your job as much as he did, right? So who did he make the iPhone for? Himself. He wanted to make money, and he wanted to make something beautiful. He certainly didn't ask me what I wanted. You know how many focus groups Apple did before they came out with the iPhone? Exactly 0. Steve Jobs didn't ask us what we wanted. He didn't try to satisfy demand. There was no demand for this. When did it come about? When Steve Jobs got up on stage and said one more thing, and there was the presentation with the iPhone, and we all said, I want one of those. Don't know what it is, but I want one of those. Right? He created demand. Indeed, businessmen create demand. Supply creates its own demand. And when it's innovation, you have to teach your customers what it is and how to use it. So Steve Jobs sold the iPhone because he wanted to make money and he wanted to have a good life, and he was enjoying it. Why did I buy the iPhone? Because I remember buying my first iPhone in 2008, and the U.S. economy at the time, you remember 2008, was going down. It was heading towards recession. And I'd read my Keynes, and Keynes said that the way to get yourself out of a recession is by consuming. So I figured I'd do my part, and I was going to go buy stuff and improve the U.S. economy and help my fellow man and make sure that people had jobs and all of that, right? Because I know that's why you guys go shopping. It's because you want to make sure the economy... No? Yeah, we go shopping. Why? Because we want to satisfy what? Why do you go shopping? What's that? Our needs. Yeah, we go shopping for our own interests. Marketplaces are places that people come together to do what? To serve their own needs, desires, wants, to pursue their own values. And they do so in a way where it's win-win, right? When I buy the iPhone for $1,000, why do I pay $1,000 for it? Because it's worth what? More than $1,000 to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. And if it was worth less, I certainly wouldn't bother. It has to be worth more. Now, I'm not going to tell you how much it's worth because I don't want you to tell Apple, but it's worth a lot of money to me. Many thousands of dollars, many tens of thousands of dollars, I would argue, given the benefits that it provides my life. And I could go through those if you want, just ask. So we go into the marketplace seeking the pursuit of our own well-being. In other words, you could say, Capitalism is about the pursuit of individuals' own values, own well-being. What do we call that? Like, I'm going to the marketplace for my own self-interested reason. Like, the marketplace is a place where we go because we're self-interested. And the marketplace is as capitalist as it gets. That's the essence of capitalism. Property rights is what makes this transaction possible. Fundamentally, capitalism is a system of self-interest. We go there to satisfy our needs, our wants, our desires. The other party is satisfying their needs, wants, desires, and we trade. And that's the difficult part, right? Because what did your mother teach you, or what did you teach your kids about self-interest? I know what my mother taught me about self-interest. Think of yourself last, Yaron. Think of others first. She didn't teach me how to be selfish. She taught me how to be selfless. Selfless. Now, she didn't mean it. No mother means it. She wanted me to be successful, and you can't be successful if you're selfless. You better think about yourself. You better plan. You better pursue your success somehow. But that's what we're taught. We're taught that what's noble and good is selflessness. We're taught that what is good is taking care of others. And what is bad, what is indeed evil, is taking care of yourself. Self-interest is frowned upon. I mean, you have to do it because you have to live, but it's not noble, it's not moral, it's not good. It's just, it's just something you have to do. I'll give you an example. And it's not even about helping other people. Because think about this. Do businessmen help other people? Like, some of them. Like, give me an example of a businessman who doesn't help other people. Like a successful one. Like somebody we know. I don't know. Philip Morris. So, what's that? I'm sorry, I find it hard to hear you. Sells tobacco, and tobacco is bad for you. True. And most of the history that Philip Morris made money, people enjoyed smoking. They didn't realize what was going on. They didn't know it was bad for them, otherwise they wouldn't have engaged. To this day, people smoke. They know the risks involved. Why do they smoke? They at least believe that they are, their life, they need it somehow. I mean, they're wrong, but they think they need it. They think it's good for them. Okay, so let's put illegal drugs, tobacco. You could argue alcohol. We might want to shuffle alcohol with the tobacco as well, because, by the way, I don't know if the glass of wine you're drinking, shrinking your life just a little bit, right? You might argue actual factual science, right? You might argue it's worth it, and the beer is the same. And that's fine, but it is. And you get to make a choice, right? It's still legal, which is nice. So you get to make a choice, whether you want to drink it or not to drink it, whether you're willing to give up that little piece of life in order to drink it. But the science is pretty clear, and we all know this. We might pretend we don't, but we all know this, right? So think about somebody like, somebody like Bill Gates, right? And before all the conspiracies around COVID. The Bill Gates of Microsoft. Think about the Bill Gates of Microsoft. Did the Bill Gates of Microsoft help people? When he was CEO of Microsoft, did he help people? How? In what way? What's that? Connected people. Yeah. So he sold us computers. He sold us really his software, right? And how do we know that him selling us computers or software was something that made our lives better? Because we bought it and we kept buying it. It's not even that we bought it and then we gave up on it because it's not worth it. We kept buying. He couldn't have become a billionaire if we only bought it once. We kept going, so I still buy Word and Excel, and I used an Apple, so I'm anti-Microsoft. And yet, I still buy these things, right? Because they make my life better. Bill Gates becomes a billionaire by making all our lives better. And not just our lives, but billions of people. There's nobody on planet Earth who has not been affected by Microsoft. Like if you're in a tribe in Africa that doesn't have technology, no electricity, you don't get computers, but you're getting foreign aid, you're benefiting from Microsoft. How's Microsoft benefiting you? All the logistics that make it possible to get the aid to you run on Windows, on Excel spreadsheets, on databases that Microsoft created. So it's so much more efficient to get you aid, therefore it's cheaper to get you aid, therefore more aid goes there. Right? There's literally nobody on the planet, or very few people on the planet, who have not benefited from Microsoft. Bill Gates, when he was at Microsoft, hero or villain in our culture? No, in our culture, not us, in the culture. Villain, he was hated. I mean, when the Justice Department went after him for antitrust laws, everybody cheered. By the way, what was the antitrust violation Microsoft committed? Anybody know? Yeah, it's good. He knows his tech history. They offered a product for free. So this was the days when in order to browse the web, you had to buy a Netscape, which was a browser. You had to buy it, $70, 70. And Microsoft came out with Internet Explorer, and it offered it free with Windows. And that's why they got sued. Not because they were scamming customers, not because they were using their monopoly power to raise prices, but because they were offering you something for free. So he was a bad guy, right? When did he become a little bit of a good guy? Yeah, when he started the Bill Gates Foundation and he started giving money away. Now, where do you think he helped more people? In the Gates Foundation, in philanthropy, or in business? It's not even close, right? Business, he impacted the lives of billions of people. In foundation, yeah, he's helped a lot of people and he's saved lives and everything, but we're talking about thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. Much more impact, much greater impact in business than in philanthropy. And I would say this to every businessman, if there's anybody in the room. You do far more good for the world in your business endeavors than you will ever do in any philanthropic stuff. You hire people, you employ people, you create products that people buy because it makes their lives better. You change the world around you, and of course you take care of yourself and your family. Philanthropy is nice. We'll get to Q&A. Philanthropy is nice, but it doesn't change the world. It doesn't. You know, the United States went from a third-rate colony of Great Britain. That's why you lost the war. It's because you didn't really fight because it wasn't that important. To the richest place on planet Earth 150 years later, 140 years later. How did they do that? Because philanthropy and community service and the goodwill and being selfless and all that stuff? No. It's because of business. That's what created America. We celebrate the politicians and the generals, but the real heroes of civilization, the real heroes of the world in which we live are the business people who built it. Our standard of living, our quality of life is a product of the business people who made it possible. It doesn't exist without them. Who's our moral ideal? So Bill Gates becomes, he's okay if he's a philanthropist. He's not okay. Is he a saint yet? No, he's not a saint. Why is he not a saint? What's the problem with Bill Gates still? He's too rich. He lives in a big house. He flies around in a private jet. Nobody who lives in a big house, flies around in a private jet, and so on, can be a saint. Unless you're the Pope, I guess. Very big house, beautiful private jet. But other than the Pope, right? You can't be a saint if you're that successful. Indeed, if you go to museums, I don't know about the museum here at York, But if you go to pretty much any museum and you see paintings of saints, what do they always look like? They're dying. They've got arrows sticking in them. They're not happy, successful, embracing life. That does not get you sainthood. The whole point is that it's not about helping people. Bill Gates helped billions of people. It's about whether you suffer. So if Bill Gates wants to become a saint, he'd have to give up all his money right now. He'd have to leave his house, move into a tent, and if he could bleed a little bit for us, then, okay, now we're open to the possibility of you becoming a saint. The morality that we have, that we hold on to, that is a standard morality in the world today, is a morality not of success and happiness and prosperity. It's not a morality of trade and production and creation. It is a morality of sacrifice. It's a morality of suffering. We admire suffering, we admire sacrifice, we admire the selfless. And we resent the self-interested. We resent the builders and the successful. And a morality like that is incompatible with capitalism. Capitalism is a system of self-interest. In capitalism, you get rewarded for self-interest. You get incentivized to pursue your self-interest. And we all participate in that self-interested activity. And self-interest is not moral according to the world in which we live. So we have a system that's very successful, and yet we view it as clearly immoral and wrong. And that can't live together. And people always say, people in America, they say that when there are elections, people vote their pocketbooks. Right? People don't vote their pocketbooks. I wish. They voted their pocketbooks, we'd be living in capitalist heaven right now. People vote their morality. People vote what they think is right, not what they think will produce more. If we have a welfare state, why do we have a welfare state? We have a welfare state because some people have less than other people. And the people who have a lot are not helping the people who have a little. And our morality says they have to help them, even if they have to sacrifice. So all the government's doing is it's coming to rich people and saying, don't worry, we'll take care of it. We'll just tax you at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. We'll take your wealth and we'll do the redistribution because you're too self-interested to do it, but that's okay, we'll take care of it. And rich people almost always vote for redistribution. The richest counties in the United States almost always vote Democratic, who are more redistributionist than the Republicans, a little bit more. And California raised taxes on millionaires from 10% state tax to 13% state tax. That's on top of the federal taxes. When you look at who voted for the increase, all the rich counties voted for the increase. Because you feel guilty, right? I don't help poor people enough. So if the government's going to do it, okay. That'll reduce my guilt a little bit. Why do we regulate businesses? So the welfare state is a consequence of this morality. Why do we regulate businesses? We regulate businesses because we know they're self-interested. And what are we being taught about self-interest, really? What's self-interest really about? What's it really about? Lying, cheating, stealing, doing whatever it takes, right? That's what self-interest is really about. And if businessmen are self-interested, they must be liars, cheaters, and stealers. And therefore, we need to regulate them. We need to control them. We need to watch them, because otherwise they lie, cheat, and steal. And that's our perception. If you go out there and you ask people about business, and you really ask them, they're suspicious, they don't trust them. Our morality demands that we not trust them. So we regulate them, not because there's an economic justification for regulation. There isn't. We regulate them because we don't trust them. Lots of examples of this. You walk into an elevator in the United States, elevator in a building, and there's a little diploma on the wall. and it says that a government inspector has inspected the elevator, it's safe. And I always go, whew, I'm so glad. Because if not for the government inspector, I know that elevators makers would make elevators that fell and killed the people involved in it, because that's how you make money in business, killing your customers. Right? McDonald's would poison us all, because why not? Right? It's cheaper to poison us. How often would you go back to that restaurant? Regulations are not what keep us safe. They're the way to make us feel like we're safe, but not what keeps us safe. What keeps us safe is the self-interest of the businesses, not to screw their customers. And, and businessmen are also human beings that don't necessarily like to inflict pain on other people, right? In spite of the mythology about what businessmen really are like. So, I would argue, and Ayn Rand argued, that if we really care about freedom, if we care about capitalism, if we care about the wealth that we have and the prosperity that we have, what we need is really to abandon our old moral convictions. And this is why it's so hard. This is why there's real resentment. What we need to do is rethink morality, rethink ethics, rethink what morality is all about. Rand asked an interesting question about this idea that morality is about sacrifice and about giving up and about placing the well-being of other people in front of your own. She asked one simple question to that. Why? Why is your life less important than other people's lives? Why shouldn't you spend the energy on making your life the best life that it can be? Why is the focus on others? Why suffer? Why sacrifice? Sacrifice meaning giving something up and expecting nothing in return. Why? Why not live a life in pursuit of your own success at living, in your own happiness? Why not pursue a life of values, of your values, of making your life the best life that it can be? Why not live a self-interested life? And is it true that to be self-interested is about lying, stealing, cheating? Well, the people who want you to sacrifice want you to think that, because they want you to believe that there are only two alternatives. Be a sacrificer or be a lie, cheating, stealer. But maybe there's a third alternative. We can live a self-interested life and where lying, cheating, and stealing is not indeed in your self-interest. I mean, I often tell students who don't have a lot of experience in life, I tell them, if you think lying's a good idea, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, lying, you can get away with stuff. It's great. I say, just try it on your best friend. Lie to them for like a day. See what happens. Yeah, we all know what happens, right? If you think cheating is so cool, just try it. And it's self-destructive. It's like if you're self-interested, it's like the worst strategy in the world is to lie, cheat, or steal. And it destroys your self-esteem. Part of achieving something in life is to know that you achieved it, not that you cheated in achieving it. It destroys self-esteem. So, what is self-interested? If we really care about self-interest, what is self-interested? What is it that makes it possible for us to achieve really anything in life, but certainly great things in life? What is the quality that we have that makes it possible for us to achieve values, create values, make stuff, build stuff? Like, if you look around this room, and this is true of every room, so don't take it personally. If you look around the room, you can look, we're a pretty pathetic animal. Really, I mean, we are, right? We're weak, we're slow, we have no claws, we have no fangs. You go out there into the wilderness and try to run down I don't know, what do you have here as a wild animal? A deer, a bison, I don't know, whatever, right? Try to run it down and bite into it. You're not going to be able to do that, and human beings have never done that, never succeeded that way. If you put a human being and a saber-toothed tiger, who's going to win? I mean, you'd think the saber-toothed tiger every single time, and yet the last saber-toothed tiger I saw was in a museum. And here you are. So how come we won that competition? How come we actually can get a bison burger around the corner probably, or certainly you can get deer? How does that happen? What is it that makes it possible for us as human beings, as weak and pathetic of an animal as we are, to be successful? What makes us human? Yeah, our capacity to think, our capacity to reason, our capacity for abstract knowledge. So some guy at some point, got some stick together and a piece of rope and put it together and created a bow and arrow, and probably everybody laughed at him and thought it was a ridiculous kind of thing, and probably the first few bows and arrows couldn't hit anything, and you certainly couldn't puncture the skin of an animal. But somebody, an entrepreneur, right, kept refining it, kept making it better, and finally it became a weapon, and now you could shoot a deer. You didn't have to run after it. And we can collaborate. We can form teams and have strategy and go after and build traps and actually catch the animals that we want, right? We don't have to rely on our physical nature. We have a brain. We have a brain that thinks conceptually. No other animal has that. That's what makes us human. So, if that's what makes us human, and if that's what allows us to achieve our values, if you think about everything we've talked about, from an iPhone to Microsoft, but really to every product that we have, everything. I mean, think about building this building. Can anybody build this building based on instinct? No. Now, this is, not a huge achievement like some of the domes you see in some of these magnificent places, but any building requires thought, requires planning, requires some engineering. Somebody has to know how this structure, and somebody had to figure it out. Only through reason can we achieve our values. So if you have to identify one thing, if you're going to be self-interested, if you only care about your own life, if you only care about yourself, you want to make your life the best thing that it can be, what is the one thing you would want to do? Is use this. Use your capacity to think. Use your reason. The one thing you would want to do is take what gives us a comparative advantage, what is in our nature, what makes it possible for us to create and produce values, and you want to focus all your efforts around it. It's the thing that makes all the difference, our rational capacity, our capacity to reason. So for Rand, to be self-interested means to be rational, to use reason, to guide every aspect of your life. And to use your reason, what do you need to be politically? What kind of environment does reason flourish, if you will? What kind of political, social environment does reason flourish? What's that? Liberal, you mean liberal free, right? Yeah, a free society. Because think about it. If there's an authority that tells you what you must think, and if you think otherwise could penalize you, you don't bother. And if you do bother, like a Galileo or somebody like that, you suffer the consequences. It's no accident that there's no entrepreneurship or very little in the Middle Ages. There's no accident that there's no entrepreneurship, no innovation in the Soviet Union or North Korea or in Mao's China. When do you get innovation? When do you get people thinking? When do you get people producing? When do you get ideas outside of the box? When you tell people, you're free. Think what you want, speak what you want, do what you want. So the mind requires freedom. Your self-interest requires freedom. Your ability to flourish and to prosper as a human being requires freedom. It's not an accident that over the last 250 years, as we become free, we weren't free back then, we've gotten richer, but not just richer. We live longer, quite a bit. What was life expectancy in the 18th century? Here in the UK, which was relatively high. What's that? it was under 40. It was in the 30s. You know what it was in Ireland? 19. Literally, you were born, your expected life expectancy was 19. Here in England, it was 32, 33, right? It doubled during the Industrial Revolution. You won't hear that in Dickens. It almost doubled in the Industrial Revolution, right? Something good happened then, in spite of what he was saying. And of course, today, life expectancy is well into our 80s. And potentially much higher, particularly if we allow technology and innovation to continue. So freedom leads to wealth. Freedom leads to longevity. Freedom leads to health. We're healthier when we're free. So self-interest requires freedom. Self-interest, a morality of self-interest, demands, people who hold the morality of self-interest demand to be free. Because they demand to use their own mind, to choose their own values, to pursue their own life. They don't want mother government sitting on their shoulders telling what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot eat, what they can and cannot drink, what businesses they can and cannot start, who they can and cannot employ. They demand freedom because their life requires freedom. Our life requires freedom. So capitalism is a moral system because it is a system that leaves individuals free to live their lives as they see fit, to relate to other people as traders, to trade value for value in win-win relationships without exploitation and without sacrifice. Capitalism is a system of a trader, not an exploiter. It's a system of a thinker, not a mindless brute. It's a system of self-interested individuals pursuing their interests based on their own values, based on their own reason. And that's why it's the moral system. It's the only moral system. It's successful materially, but that material success comes from the fact that it's a system that liberates the human mind to produce and create and imagine values and then trade for them. So capitalism, in spite of its bad rap, is the only moral system if you define morality correctly. Thank you.
So we're going to go to Q&A.
The man with the yellow shirt had a question in the middle.
Yeah, one second. Let's just...
You guys have accents, so you have to speak a little slower for me to understand. I apologize, but it's the reality. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Really interesting, very thought-provoking. Just great to be challenged in this forum, so thank you for coming. The idea that the state tells us what to think doesn't chime with me in terms of actually a lot of corporations tell us how to think these days, and they are by nature, by the definition you use, capitalist. So Coca-Cola, for instance, this is what you want, this is what you'll have, this breeds success.
Yeah.
All the advertising, happy people rolling around, eating the McDonald's, doing whatever they are. So there's a challenge there, because I don't know that it's the state that much that's in people's faces saying, do this, don't do this. It's more advertising, business, capitalism that's telling people how to behave, how to think, what to do. And that's kind of my first thought.
Sure. So what's the difference between a state telling you what you can and cannot do and a corporation telling you what you can and cannot do? What's the fundamental difference between the two? What's that? In what sense? Yeah. With a corporation, I could say, go to hell. I used to drink a lot of Coca-Cola. Loved Coca-Cola. I still fantasize about that first sip of a really ice-cold can of Coca-Cola, right? And I went, at some point I said, this is not good for me. I went cold turkey and stopped drinking Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola can run all the ads they want, and I'm not going to change the fact that I will not drink a Coca-Cola. Not good for me. I'm not doing it. When I first came to America, all the beer ads were the same. They all had gorgeous bikini-clad women running around in a beer commercial. I never understood the connection between the two. but it was supposed to entice me to drink beer. And I said, I don't like beer. I know, now I'm a real heretic. But I don't like beer. I'm not going to read beer. I'm not going to drink beer. You can advertise all you want. Now, if the state tells me, Yaron, here's your allotment of beer. You have to drink 3 glasses of beer. And if you don't, what happens? We'll penalize you. We'll charge you money. We'll send you to jail. Now I don't have a choice. That's the difference. The major difference is one allows you the ability to resist and to walk away. And it's too bad not enough of us do that. But, the more we encourage people to think for themselves, the more they will. The state doesn't allow you to do that. The state uses coercion and force. All advertising can do is entice. Well, okay, lots of things entice me, and I can walk away from them.
It spends billions of dollars enticing people and is exceptionally successful at tapping into those psychological needs of people. Yep. And that is by nature exploitative, I would argue. So
I'm skeptical. When I drank the Coca-Cola, I loved it. So I didn't consider myself being exploited. I make it a choice because I like the taste and I enjoy it. Now, are some people just mindless and they just drink the Coca-Cola because they saw it in an ad? Sure. But you're not going to cure mindless people of their mindlessness by limiting what Coca-Cola does. They're going to be mindless. They're mindless in other ways as well. They voted for Donald Trump, for example. Mindlessness is not something, it's something we need to teach people that they need to stop doing, that it's not in their self-interest, that they need to use their mind, that they need to engage reason, they need to think.
But Coca-Cola aren't going to tell people not to drink Coca-Cola and use your free will, because that's not in their interests. So again, there's a contradiction.
But they can't force me. See, this is the difference. They can't force me. So if I don't want to participate in the trade, I walk away. The government, everything it does is force. I can't decide not to pay my taxes, even though I really don't like paying them. And I don't think I get value in return. I think I get a lousy value. It's worse than Coca-Cola. The value of Coca-Cola is much higher than what I get in return for my taxes. And I can't stop. They'll put me in jail if I do. Coca-Cola cannot do anything to me if I stop drinking, if I stop consuming their product. If we all decide we're never drinking Coca-Cola again, Coca-Cola can't do anything about it. It can try to entice us more, but it's just arguments. It's just, you have free will, you have the ability to resist it. All of us have the ability to resist it. We don't choose not to, but we have the ability to do it. Yeah, in the back.
Would you say that the internet has changed the nature of the state?
No.
No.
No. I mean, I don't think it's changed the nature of the state. It's made surveillance on all of us much easier, but it hasn't changed the nature of it. It's just given them a technology to monitor us more easily.
The way that statists are allowed to go about their business, now that the internet says, so Bill Gates is in bed with Donald Trump, big business and internet are in bed together. And in that instance, the internet and Microsoft and the statist Donald Trump. Would you say that world government has been irrevocably and radically changed by the advent of the internet?
Government has radically changed because of the internet? No.
No. Would you agree that millennials do think that is the case?
The millennials?
Millennial generation, the generation that came of age with the advent of internet popularity, does consider that is the case.
I don't think the generations are that different.
Okay.
I don't.
So,
I mean,
I
remember.
Sorry, you think the generation that came of age with the advent of color TV is not different to the generation that came of age with the advent of the internet?
To some extent, but not in a dramatic fashion. I think that the thing that has shaped the generations much more than an iPhone is our educational system. I think education has declined. Mm-hmm. And if our generations are worse, it's because of education, not because of technology.
Might that not be a statist response to the egalitarian, progressive attitude of millennials and the internet generation, as they were?
No, I think it's the other way around. I think we have taught them to be egalitarians. That is, if you look at our universities and you look at our schools, they are taught egalitarianism, and they become egalitarian, and then you get a circle, right? Because you teach them to be egalitarians, and they take it seriously. There's more demand for egalitarianism, and you get a cycle out of that. It's not the technology that made that possible. It's our deteriorating quality of our education, which is a consequence of the deteriorating quality of our thinkers, of our intellectuals.
Thank you.
You know, I remember when I was growing up, we were told that my generation would be a rotten generation because all we did is sit opposite the television and watch television all day. And before that, it was radio. And after that, it was the internet. And now it's the iPhone. We always look for technology to blame for the problems. But I don't think it's technology. We get from the technology what we want to get for the technology. It's the ideas that we hold that ultimately shape us. Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot about freedom and free will.
Yep.
So let's think about a scenario where food company, for example, make crisp. Make crisp.
Yeah.
It not a lot, like, okay, so some food company with the free will and self-interest to make as much profit as possible,
Yep.
put not good things in the food.
Yeah.
Consumers' free will is to get food that is good for us,
Yeah.
right? So there are clash of free will there.
Yeah.
So how
This is-
capitalism bridge that?
Sure, this is the beauty of markets, right? This is how markets deal with it. So I want healthy food. You're producing food that when tested is shown not to be healthy. I'm not going to buy it.
Now, but there lies the inequality of power. So the likes of, I don't know, whoever makes ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
They hold more money, they hold more capital to persuade people through advertising to think that, oh, eat this, you'll be happy, you'll be healthy, all the while, you know, either hiding or ignoring the fact what the ingredient might do to their customer.
So let's assume, and I think it's still an assumption, but let's assume that highly processed food is really bad for you. And at this point, pretty much everybody's saying it on television, and every news article is saying it, and everybody knows that ultra-processed food is bad for you. Don't eat it. I don't care how much billions they put into advertising. Don't eat it. You know, this is the free will. This is your personal responsibility. You're responsible for your life. You're not responsible to, you don't need to do what the advertisers tell you to do. I don't care how many billions of dollars they put into it. I try to avoid highly processed food because I think it's probably bad for me. Anybody can do that.
How do you apply that argument that, you know, strong will
Yeah.
to teenagers? Because
Oh,
by
this is
psychology,
this is
because
called parenting. I know it's a lost art. It's a lost art, but you basically need to tell your kids you can't eat that. So, for example, my teenagers grew up with no television, right? There was no live television. They couldn't just flip on. In those days, you had the channels. There are certain shows that I was fine with them watching. We got them on DVD or somewhat, or we got them on DVD and they watched that. They didn't watch whatever they wanted to watch at the particular. You know, if I decided no sugar for my kids, then no sugar for my kids. So yes, I'll cheat once in a while and go out, but at least in my home, you educate them not to do stuff. It's about time we got a little tough with our kids and not let them do whatever the hell they wanted. Yes, children need to learn to delay gratification. They need to learn how to be self-interested. Self-interest is not something you're born with. It's something that you have to apply your reason to. So you have to teach your kids to read a label on a food package and see what's in there and tell them don't eat it if it's got this junk in it. And I know it's hard, and I know kids resist, but that's our job as parents. That's our job as educators, is to teach them that. Yeah.
Following on from that, how you know what food is reasonable to eat, that's because of labeling, and that labeling is because of regulation, and it's those regulations, it's the state getting involved that means that we are better informed and we can make better choices about what is or isn't the right thing for us to eat. So don't you then have to accept that the state has to have a role in relation to that?
No. If people wanted labeling, then they would have demanded it. And indeed, the first labeling on food packages was not what came before the regulations. It came before the government. It's just like everything else is always attributed to the regulation. But the trend towards labeling, the trend towards restaurants putting the calories on the thing, started well before the regulation. And what the regulators do is they establish something that was already moving in that direction, and they standardized it.
No, the 19th century.
In the 19th century, of course.
Hang on. Regulation about foods and what could go in them came about because of adulteration by unscrupulous companies who poison people.
Yeah.
And that's when the state got involved because of that.
That is just not true. That is just not true. If you read the history, so first of all, you have to recognize the fact that when the food industry first got created, they didn't know exactly what they were doing, because nobody knows when you first create an industry. And yes, there were behaviors and standards that were not particularly good. But as the food industry realized what was going on, they cleaned themselves up. And only then did the regulations come in and take credit for it. The same thing happened with child labor. We all say child labor went away because the state came in and banned it. But if you actually look at the timeline, by the time the state came in and banned child labor, there was almost no child labor in English factories. I know you say no because that's what they teach, but they're not teaching you the truth because they don't want you to know the truth. The fact is that here's a statistic looking all over the world at child labor. When GDP per capita reaches $12,000 per capita, child labor disappears. Has nothing to do with the state, has nothing to do with regulation. 12,000 is about the magic number. Why? Because at $12,000 per person, adjusted for inflation and adjusted for whatever currency the people are using, at $12,000 per person, parents can feed their kids without the kids working. They can afford to feed them from their own wealth. And they pull them out of the factories. 12,000 per capita is also the point in which factories become, productivity is increasing. Children are not good at work. Think about managing 8-year-olds. So you pull them out because you can replace them with machines. So 12,000 per capita, if you look at Indonesia and Malaysia and Vietnam and Cambodia and the UK in the 19th century and America in the 19th century, that's the point in which child labor basically disappears. And then government steps in and says, no more child labor, and gets all the credit. But it's not the case. Same thing with the 5-day, the 8-day work week, the hours, the work week. These are all market phenomena that then the unions and government take credit for.
So do you believe that there should be no regulation at all? Is that what we're kind of defending here? Because I work in pharmaceuticals, which is obviously highly regulated, and there are many, many scenarios where people's, let's say, freedom or lies or fraud have impacted other people before or after regulation. Like if you talk about Teflon, where they literally contaminated the entire world with toxic carcinogens, right? There's documented cases of this, and then regulation appeared because they did these things, right? So there is, I guess, some scope for regulation. I agree that, it can hinder innovation and slow things down, but people aren't necessarily all inherently, shall we say, moral, and people are greedy, and they do commit awful crimes on, I guess,
So I believe markets regulate themselves much better than government does. Yes, they're going to be drugs that go out into the market because we don't know what they're going to cause that hurt people. And then when somebody poisoned Tylenol withdrew all the Tylenols from all the stores in order to keep its name clean, right? Drug companies have no incentive to put out a drug there that is going to do damage to people, because otherwise they're going to be devastated and all their drugs are going to be tainted. And the reality is that in a free market, it's not like there's no, quote, regulation. It's just private regulation. Now, what do I trust more? Do I trust the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, or a private lab that makes money off of getting it right? And if they don't get it right, they're going to lose money. What happens if the FDA doesn't get something right? Does anybody lose their job? Does a politician get kicked out? No. Nothing happens to regulate it. You know, I once listened to a story on NPR, this is National Public Radio, very left-wing leaning radio station in the United States, about food and farmers, right? And the farmers were being inspected for the quality of their food because, again, E. coli and all these other things, you can contaminate food. And they had 2 inspectors coming regularly, one from the FDA and one from the supermarkets. Guess who was tougher? The FDA or the supermarket? The supermarket. Because the supermarket carries liability. If they carry the food that's contaminated and sell it to you and you sue the supermarket, they lose money. If the FDA screws up, what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing. And then what's the incentive of the FDA? The incentive of the FDA, the incentive of bureaucrats generally, and I'm not making fun of them, this is just the incentive, is why take risks at all? Right? Why do anything revolutionary? Why innovate? Right? Life is good the way it is. Stagnation is the incentive of government, basically. Right? So I would prefer private regulation, i.e. private people to privately label the drugs and give us that than anything the government does, because what the government does is going to be far more corrupt.
Yes, I agree with what you mean. Private regulation does work, but there is still cases where it fails. But I suppose it depends on what you count it as, because I guess independent private verification is perfectly reasonable and justifiable.
So do you know all the electronic stuff? I don't know in the UK, but all the electronic stuff, anything you plug into electricity in America, right? And it works pretty well, right? People almost don't get electrocuted anymore, right? There's very little harm that is done from electronics. Who regulates electronics in the United States? Not the government. There's a private entity that gives its stamp of approval to every electronic device in the United States, and it works. Is once in a while is something going to get by and you're going to be an accident? Sure. Life, if you expect life to be risk-free, then you might as well die now, because it isn't, right? Life is risky. Risk is part of life. And nobody's going to be, you're not going to create a system where everybody's going to be perfect. So, yeah, I want a system where you get the most innovation with the least amount of risk, and I think that's clearly a free market.
Hi there. I was in the room last week where Darwin first unveiled his theory of natural selection.
Yep.
And in The Descent of Man, he talks about competition between individuals, but he also notes that sometimes there is altruism amongst tribes, as he put it, in the collective self-interest. Do you believe in a collective self-interest?
Not really, right? Not if we really mean that. I don't think there is such a thing as a collective in that sense. A collective is just a collection of individuals. Now, you can say, what's in the self-interest of a group of individuals? Yes, but politically, what's in the self-interest of the group of individuals is respecting the right of each individual to pursue his own life and happiness. This is the concept of individual rights. It's why we've achieved so much progress. But tribes have a huge, or put it this way, there are people within a tribe that have an enormous interest in convincing you that the best thing for you is to sacrifice for the tribe. Who are those people? Well, there are basically 2, right? There's the tribal leader who tells you that you have to sacrifice for the tribe because it's his interest, right? But where does he get the authority to make that claim? From the guy standing next to him, which is typically a witch doctor of some form or another. And that witch doctor will say, I spoke to the spirits, and this is what you should do. And, tribes, primitive tribes, stayed primitive for a very, very long time because of that. Because they suppress individual expression, they suppress individual innovation, and as a consequence, they stay primitive. And to break out of that is to recognize the freedom of individual not to be part of a collective, to have his ideas imposed on him from that collective. So there's something about a group and how do we maximize the well-being of people in the group. But there's no well-being of the group per se, because there is not such thing. There's no entity group. It's just a collection of individuals.
Thank you. Just his observation was that tribes where that was happening survive better and thrive better.
Well, I think history suggests otherwise, right? I mean, the tribes that broke out of that, and I'd say the first tribe to break out of that is probably the Greeks. The tribes that broke out of that and allowed for individual thought and individual innovation prospered and ultimately took over the world. And the Enlightenment is a period in which, in Europe and later on in the rest of the world, people broke out of that collectivistic, tribal, nationalistic perspective and started thinking, and rejected much of religion as part of that, and started thinking outside of the box and started innovating and growing and led to the modern world.
Yes, we've heard a lot about when the government shouldn't intervene, but at what point, in your view, should it?
So I think the government's sole responsibility is the protection of individual rights. So the government should intervene when individual rights are either violated or threatened. So, and how do you violate individual rights? The only way to violate individual rights is by force. So the government's job is to prevent crooks and criminals and fraudsters and to do their thing, and to put them in jail if they actually commit the crime. And if you're doing something that is clearly threatening to other people, I don't know, you just put up a crane and the crane is like 45 degrees and it looks like it's going to fall on people. Yeah, I mean, the government should step in and inspect and make sure that it's not about to fall and kill people. So or if you're driving like this, right, on the highway, yeah, you're a threat to other people. So the government has a role to step in. It has to be physical, and fraud I consider physical here. It has to be a physical threat or actual physical violence against somebody else that would generate government action. Short of that, I don't think, if the government hears about a lab that is producing cyanide and selling it as candy, yeah, they should go and check it out. Absolutely. That's a threat to individual rights.
So on the back of the idea that the state's primary role is to protect individual rights.
It's not its primary role, it's its only role.
Only role. So thinking about then, for example, 2020 and the COVID pandemic, whatever your thoughts on that kind of was, with regards to the vaccine campaign, do you believe that that should have been funded by the state, or do you believe that private companies should have had the freedom to produce a vaccine for said illness with the view that they weren't indemnified and that if anything went wrong, they would utterly have to pay kind of the consequences of their actions? Kind of the idea of bailouts, really.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge here is that we live in this mixed economy where it's very difficult for companies to do something like that in a world in which the government controls so much of the resources and they have to go through an FDA. So yes, in a pure capitalist society, the government wouldn't step in to fund vaccines. It would let the companies fund those vaccines and it would let them produce it. Now, I would have liked to have seen the vaccines come out in the summer of 2020, not in the winter, not 6 months, 6 months earlier because they were done by then, right? And they would have said, look, we can't guarantee efficaciousness. We can't 100%, but we've done this phase one. We've done the safety phase. We think it's safe, but it's your life. Sign here that you're accepting the risk and we'll give you a shot. They would have saved millions of lives, right, if they'd done it then. But no, we had to go through every step of the FDA. We had to go all this thing, and then, and even then it was sped up, but it was accelerated. And by the time we got to, when was it, November or December, they finally released it. But imagine if they'd released it 6 months earlier. And we could have all been guinea pigs if we wanted to. And if we don't want to, we wouldn't have had to take it. This is the kind of voluntary risk-return trade-off that we as individuals should be taking. We should be shown a drug. All these drugs that are banned, I remember there was a drug that was banned in the United States. It was a drug for arthritis pain from arthritis, which can be debilitating, can be awful, right? Really, really bad. And it was some people, it was the only drug that gave them relief from pain. What's that? Cannabis. Okay, so this is before cannabis became a big deal. Anyway, this is the only drug that gave them relief from pain. And cannabis is a good example of the state banned it, and now it's approving it. And, what's it why is it any of the state's business whether I smoke cannabis or not? It's none of their business. Anyway, this drug was shown to increase the chance of heart disease by 10%. So it was withdrawn completely from the market. And people told me, I'm willing to have my chance of heart disease go up by 10%, not to feel the pain every day. Why can't we make those choices as individuals? The state makes it for all of us. And you think they don't. They do it every single day, all the time. The drugs you use are basically drugs that were approved by some committee that decided that it's good for you or not. They make those decisions. Cannabis, that's addictive or whatever, or teenagers use it, so it must be bad. So we don't allow it. Other things we allow. What's the standard? The standard is some tribal committee that decides what's good for the tribe instead of individuals in the tribe making a decision about this is good for me, this is not. I'm willing to take the risk. I understand the information. My doctors provided me with the risk in return, and I make a decision about my own life. Who is better to make a decision about my life than me? I don't know anybody. Now, if I'm sick, I'm going to consult with a doctor, but he's not going to take me into surgery unless I approve it. I have to make the decision, not somebody else. So you get, if I'm going to go and have surgery in the U.S., I get as many second opinions as I can, because I don't want to go to surgery, right? So you get as many second opinions as you can, and you make a decision yourself. So you want a system where you are responsible for your own life. You don't shrug off the responsibility to some other entity. They probably don't care about your life as much as you do.
Thank you. I'm curious in the discussion and the vision of this free will society and so on, how you feel society should look after its vulnerable. And if you like, the people who aren't necessarily economically productive. So you're talking about older people, people with disabilities, et cetera, et cetera. How would you propose that this society might look after those people, please?
So I think whatever help they get, and some people clearly need help, they can't take care of themselves, they need help in whatever state they are. I think whatever help they get will be determined by the people around them. That is, if people around them want to help them, they will help them and they will facilitate that. I believe we are pretty benevolent as human beings and we want to help the people around us and we want to care for them. But if it turns out society is not willing to help them, then they won't be helped, which would be sad. But I don't see any role. See, I don't believe in force. I don't believe in people coercing me to do things I don't want to do. So I want to help the people I want to help, and some people I don't want to help. And let me decide who to help and who not to help. And, it could be that a majority of you don't like who I'm helping and who I'm not helping. Tough. I want to make those choices myself. Again, this is personal responsibility. Now, I believe that people like that would be better taken care of by their family and their friends and the people surrounding them in their community than they're being taken care of today by the government. Much better. And I think the incentives are better to get them back on their feet, rehabilitated if they're young, and back into a productive activity than the current system provides, which I think in many respects the welfare state institutionalizes people into poverty and provides them with wrong incentives and bad incentives in terms of advancing their lives. But it'll be determined by the people around them, which is the way it should be. The people close to them will decide how much to support them by. And remember, we'll all be richer, right? Just think of what you could do with the 50% you send off to the tax man every month. You'd have a lot more money to think about being generous with other people, to think about how you want to help and what you want and who you want to help in your community or in your family or in your group of friends or whatever, however you define it. Right now, we don't help people. I don't help anybody. I paid in the office, right? I gave my 60% of my taxes. I gave it to them. They're taking care of it. Why should I help anybody, right? I've already done it. So Let's take on the responsibility of taking care of the things that we think are important. And we won't all take care of the same people. You know, we have different values, so we will take care of different segments, right? I care about children. Happy to give a chunk of money to a children's hospital or orphan children or however you want to define it. I care less about old people, just maybe because I'm getting old, right? So, somebody else will care more about old people and less about children, which is fine. And we'd all allocate, and maybe in different stages in your life, you care about different people differently. And you'd be willing to allocate your money differently. But it's your money. You get to decide, not some bureaucrat in London decide for you. That's the difference.
Got time for one last question.
So how do we turn the tide on the morality of society to start valuing self-interest? Do you think it's a natural pendulum swing that over time it will swing back the other way? Or do we have to kind of promote that change?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. There's never been a society really dedicated to self-interest. So it's not a pendulum, it's not a swing. The reality is that we get movements in that direction periodically in history, maybe in Greece with Aristotle. Aristotle's morality is a morality of self-interest. It's a morality that says, how do I achieve eudaimonia? How do I achieve happiness? What virtue should I follow, not for the common good, not for the tribe, but what virtue should I follow to achieve happiness, my happiness? That's Aristotelian ethics. That's his Aristotelian ethics. So that's one thinker. And that's crushed primarily by religion after that. There's none of that. And then you start getting it again in the Enlightenment, particularly in France, in the French Enlightenment. They're thinking, okay, if we abandon religion, how do we come up with morality? And, maybe self-interest isn't that bad. And think about the Declaration of Independence, the American Declaration of Independence from you guys. It's the right to life. Whose life? And this is John Locke, right? The right to life. Whose life? Your life, right? Your life. That's pretty self-interested. Right to liberty. Whose liberty? My liberty, right? The right for me to think and write and express myself in any way that I want. And in the most selfish political statement ever, right? Right to pursue happiness. So they almost got it in the 18th century. But again, they didn't get it fully. I think the first philosopher in human history to fully articulate a morality of self-interest and to ground it properly philosophically is Ayn Rand. So how do we get it? By advocating for it. How do we get it? By teaching people about it, by constantly education. It's the only way to change the world. We can put guns to people. It doesn't, that doesn't do it, and I wouldn't want to do it if that was the case anyway. You can't force people to change their minds. You can force people to pretend they change their minds, but not to pretend, but change their mind. The only way to do it is through education. It's by teaching people that their lives matter, that they should want to live the best damn life that they can live, to pursue their own happiness. And here's some tools. And what morality should be, the purpose of morality should be, is to teach us how to live. Teach us how to live the best life that we can. This is the Aristotelian project. How to live the best life that we can. Okay, so we can debate whether this particular virtue and that particular virtue, but if we agree that the purpose of morality is to live the best possible life, to teach us how to do that, then I think it's game over. Then I think everybody's self-interested then, because it's living the best life you can live for you. And what that means exactly, and what virtues count, what values you should pursue, now we can get into interesting debates about that. But the purpose should be your life, your happiness, your eudaimonia. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Yaron. That was absolutely brilliant. I hope it's got you thinking. Some of you may walk out here completely disagreeing, but that's totally fine. At the end of the day, that's why we exist, right? One of the important things to think about is sometimes, I said this just a couple of weeks ago in a lecture that I did, we go through life thinking that we know what we're thinking, when actually we haven't really stopped to think what we're actually thinking. And I think sometimes we kind of live life blind, not actually understanding the kind of fundamental philosophy that actually guides us. And I believe that the forum is actually allowing for that opportunity to really analyze what it is that we truly think. So I hope you've enjoyed today. I hope it's challenged you. We really want to stay in touch with you guys. It's really nice to see so many new faces tonight. So if you want, you can head over to our website. There's also a QR code on the wall there. You can subscribe to our newsletter to give you information on upcoming events. This coming Sunday, the coffee house will be open and we'll be doing debates and questions around the table over various different topics. The following Sunday, I'm going to be doing a lecture on Has Woke Destroyed the West? So if you're interested in the whole woke culture and how that's working, then please do come along to that. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel and our X, where you can get more information on there. Last but not least, we are a charity, and I understand that obviously we've done tickets tonight, but ultimately we stay open and we can continue what we're doing by generous donations. So we do have a machine just on the right-hand side of the coffee house in there. If you're willing to maybe give something before you leave today, we'd be really grateful. And once again, thank you. And can we just put our hands together for Yaron one more time? Truly grateful for such a wonderful evening. And I really do hope that this is the start of a wonderful chapter here at the Forum. So enjoy the rest of your night. The bar and the coffee house is still open. Please feel free to stay around and chat to each other, and we'll hope to see you soon. You take care. Yes, and also check out Yaron's YouTube channel. He's got some great content in there discussing things all the time, so please do. Thank you very much, everyone.